What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the Sweet to the Soul podcast. It's your host, Nevaeh Galan, and it feels like it's been forever since I sat down and recorded an episode. I know I left you guys hanging last week. I did not post a new episode last week. Let's just say life was crazy. School was crazy. I'm on break now, so the week before break, you have your teachers assigning exams, finishing up essays, finishing up assignments. So I decided to just take that week off just to focus on my schoolwork, get all that done. But I am back. So I'm excited to be back and recording. So this week's episode, I decided to actually do a topic which I am currently experiencing. Once again, my last episode, it was about my season of waiting. And now, even with not posting last week, I'm in this state of mind of burnout. And I know a lot of college students go through this. And even if you're not in college, a lot of adults go through this. It's really normal. And I didn't even realize I was going through this. It took a lot of deep examining and honestly therapy. That's what brought it out of me. I didn't realize I was going through it, but I was showing signs of this, and I was told from my therapist that I was going through that stage of burnout currently. When I was told that I was going through this, I had heard of the phrase burnout before, but I did not see or catch on to the physical symptoms of burnout, the mental and emotional symptoms of it. So in my head, I was just going through another depressive state of mind, which happens usually when I am stressed with school, when there's family issues, outside issues, personal issues, when all this stuff is boggling up and I really don't have time to sit down and go through it because I'm always on go. I can't really just sit down with myself and fix these other issues because I always have something else to worry about. So usually when that happens to me, I'm in more of a depressive state. So in my head, I'm thinking that I'm just going through a depressive state. So I thought this would be a really good topic to talk about because I feel like a lot of other people out there are probably thinking that they're only going through a depressive state of mind. They're going through depression, anxiety, they feel numb to pain, when in reality, it could be signs of burnout. So in this week's episode, I'm going to be talking about the physical and emotional symptoms of burnout, stuff that I was experiencing personally, and then also ways to get out of this phase of burnout. All right, so first let's talk about what burnout is. So the definition of burnout is a form of exhaustion caused by feeling swamped. Very broad definition. But this can be due to any form of prolonged emotional, physical, or mental stress. So to kind of just water it down, it's when you feel like you can't keep up with life, which I know we can feel like this at all times. And there are several forms of burnout like overload, neglect, but we're not going to go into these too deeply whatsoever. And also just a disclaimer before we move on, I am no expert, I am not a doctor, I am not a therapist. The knowledge that I have on this topic just comes from a few sessions of therapy, which we discussed my personal experience from burnout, and it just comes from that, my personal experience. So if you feel like this needs to be talked to with a doctor or a therapist, please go out and do that. Do not just rely on this podcast episode. Mental illness, all these things are real, they're serious, and a lot of them need to be treated with actual medication, not just a quick 15-20 minute episode. So if you feel like you need to be diagnosed with something, please go see somebody and talk about that. So, okay, now that we got all that out the way, let's move on to some symptoms of burnout. So burnout doesn't happen immediately. It's very gradual, and these symptoms can start out very small and unnoticeable. So one of the symptoms being feeling tired and exhausted for long periods of time. You can feel like that literally every day. As soon as I started college, I felt like that every day. So just having one of these symptoms is not enough to classify it as burnout. You need to have a lot of these symptoms for a long amount of time. Another symptom being having a lack of enthusiasm. In my personal experience, I realized this once it was pointed out to me that I was experiencing a lack of enthusiasm. And this can go for anything in life. It can go for a job. It can go for school. It can go for relationships. Anything where the typical you would have so much passion or drive for something, and now you're just feeling a lack of that. So for me with school, when I was going through this, I realized that I didn't care if my grades were slipping. I didn't have the passion of waking up and loving what I was going to school for. And that's, again, really typical of college students, people who decide to change majors, who are questioning if they're in the right major. It's really typical to lose that enthusiasm that you once had. Another symptom of burnout is feeling negativity towards something, your life, or other people. And this one, when I noticed it, I was I'm actually doing this. I'm doing it. So with me, someone would do nothing to me at all. They would be in my presence and I was just irritated. Automatically, please just get away from me. And Sometimes I can get like that, but I have to have a reason for getting like that, if that makes sense. I won't just like be irritated with you for no reason. I'm usually very sociable, or I've become very sociable. So you would have to do something for me to just be like, yeah, please get away from me. But I had noticed, like, even with my close friends, like, I was like, I just want to be left alone. Like, you guys aren't doing anything to me, but I don't like you right now. And I couldn't pinpoint why until I realized what I was going through. So that's definitely something to look out for. Also, just negativity towards something you're doing. Again, a passion that you have, or just life in general, like feeling like I just don't want to do this and like not knowing why. And again, this is why this process of burnout can look very similar to a depressive state of mind, which is what I was thinking in my head the whole time. Because when you get in these depressive states, you start to question life. A lot of people get into suicidal thoughts. So that's why these two really overlap with some of the symptoms that you can have during either one of these. Another symptom that you could experience is not being able to do the simple tasks that you, like your normal self, could typically do. You're not doing them as easily. So for me, it was just getting up in the morning. Some days I found it really hard, whereas my typical self, I like to get up early. I like to just start my day. I found that just hard. Like, I wanted the extra 5 to 10 minutes to sleep. Even just like getting changed, like picking out an outfit, I noticed frustrated me. Like, I didn't know. I was like, what am I going to wear? And I made it such a big deal, but literally, Nevaeh, you're picking out an outfit. Like, what are you doing? But I noticed that like I didn't even want to wear anything. I had nothing, like no fashion. Like, I don't know how to explain it in words, but like when I would try to pick out an outfit, I would just be like, yeah, no, I can't do it. So just stuff like that, going to class, focusing in class was a big one for me. Depending on the class, I just lost all focus during it. Like, I did not even want to be in class. I would almost fall asleep in class, and it was really hard for me, whereas my typical self would not find that difficult whatsoever. Talking to people, being on the phone with people, that I found it a little difficult. I just wanted to be left alone. And again, this is another overlap of symptoms between depression and then also burnout. So it's really important to kind of figure out the difference between the two, which we're going to talk about. All right, so just a story time of my experience with burnout. I would say it started the beginning of February when I started showing symptoms. But again, I wasn't aware of these symptoms until I had pointed it out with my therapist, and she had said, okay, this is what you're going through. And at that point, I had to re-examine myself and say, okay, when did these symptoms start? So I had noticed that they started the beginning of February. I was just getting back into the groove of being at school, taking tests and exams, getting schoolwork done. And honestly, the one phrase that I could use to describe it, which is what I had brought up to my therapist, was it just felt like the same stuff, insert non-PG-13 word there, different day. That's literally what it felt like to me. And I felt just so numb. Like, every day was just the same thing, getting up, going to class, doing work, going to bed. And it felt like, again, that lack of enthusiasm. Like, I was tired of doing this. And then I would think to myself, like, wow, I have 5 more years of doing this, the same thing. And it just like freaked me out, because then I start questioning, like, is this what I want to do? Like, why am I doing this if I already don't have love for what I'm doing? Like, I have no passion in it right now. How can I keep doing this for the years to come? And I would find myself at this point procrastinating. And I've always been a procrastinator. I will not deny that all through high school. It's just something that I have never gotten over, and I honestly think I will never get over. But I found myself procrastinating more than usual, because usually I'll wait maybe till a couple days before to do a long assignment, but it's not like I'm not doing work every day. Like, every day after school, I'm always doing something, some school assignment. And I had noticed that during this time, there would be days where I would come home after school or come back to my dorm, and I would just not do anything school related. I would just watch Netflix, get something to eat, go to the gym, anything that wasn't school related, and I would push everything off until the last possible time to do it. And then on that day, I would cram everything in. And that obviously just wasn't like me to do. And this cycle just repeated itself every week. For the first half of February, I would find myself waiting until the end of the week to do something, or the weekend to do something, and then doing everything for the following week. And it was bad, but I didn't notice it at the time. I thought I was just stressed from school and all this. And then I also found myself getting into those depressive state of minds even more than usual. And especially on the weekends when like it should have been my rest time to like just recover from the previous week. I found myself just like being depressed and not knowing why I was being depressed. And unfortunately, this isn't unusual for me. It happens, especially with coming to college and just like the pressure of everything. It does happen to me, but it just felt different this time. And that's when I really had to dissociate what it meant to be depressed and what it meant to be going through burnout. So what I can say is that if you're going through this process and you're trying to figure out what you're actually going through, if you can get to the source of your issue, with me, I felt like it was just my workload, and you can remove that source of your stress and exhaustion that you're going through. And if you do that and you start to feel better, you're most likely going through burnout rather than depression because there's a source to what you're going through. There's a reason for what you're going through. Burnout can most likely go away when you start focusing your energy onto something that you actually like. And we'll get more into that when I talk about how you can control and handle your burnout. And also depression, usually, again, it doesn't have a cause. Sometimes, obviously, there are causes with stuff you go through. And depression usually lasts much longer. So if you can remove that source of why you're stressed and you're still feeling like just down or numb or however you feel in those depressive states, it's most likely depression and not burnout. So like for me, when I started to put better habits into play, I realized that I was getting better. Like now I feel like I'm not in that stage of burnout. So that is how I was able to refocus what it was and realize, okay, it wasn't just me going through a depressive state of mind. It was actually burnout. And again, I'm no doctor, I'm no therapist. So if you feel like you're going through any of this and need to reach out to someone, obviously you can reach out to me for advice on how I got through it. But definitely go talk to a doctor if you feel like it's necessary. And now I'm going to switch it over to how we can control and take hold of this burnout. All right, so the first thing I recommend if you feel like you're going through this is to get sleep and get rest. That's one thing that really helped me when I was going to my therapist about this and she had pointed it out to me. The very first thing she said was, Nevaeh, this weekend, don't do anything. Just rest. Like, you deserve it. And if you're going through burnout, if you're just in college in general, let's get it straight. You deserve a break. You deserve a weekend to rest. I don't care what your major is. College is hard. So rest. But definitely if you're going through burnout as well, that's just another sign that you need to just stop and take a breather. So that weekend I relaxed. I pushed off, but I don't want to say pushed off because that sounds negative. I needed to push off my schoolwork for that weekend. I needed to not do anything Friday. I needed to not do anything Saturday. And then Sunday was, okay, let's open the textbook, let's get the computer out, and let's tackle these assignments one by one. All right, the next thing I would say would be to try to lessen your workload and also do not cram things like I did. Definitely not the way to go. But I also don't just want to focus this burnout on just academics and college and school because you can go through burnout besides just those things. A lot of people who have a job go through burnout a lot more because it's like the same routine every time they go to work, especially if you're in a career where like you're not experiencing new things every day. Like me going into the medical field, I get excited to know that I'm going to be experiencing new people and new situations every day, but a lot of jobs aren't like that. So if you feel like in your work environment you're going through burnout, it's really important to just reevaluate where you're at and say, is this the career that I want to be in for the rest of my life? Is this something that's going to excite me? Does this get me out of bed in the morning? And if it does, you're in the right career, but it's never too late to change that career around and start a new passion, start a new spark. Again, lessen that workload, not just in school. If you're on cases, on files, and you need to lessen it, do that for yourself because you deserve it, honestly. Again, if you're in school, don't cram things to the last moment. Chunk it out. Do things every day, little bits and pieces until you eventually get it all done. The next thing I would say to do would be to set boundaries, and you can do this in many ways. Whether it's for school and you want to limit how long you study, say after class, okay, I'm only going to study until 8 o'clock and then I'm done for the night, or how late you're going to stay in the office to work on extra work, whether you're going to go to bed earlier, get up earlier, whatever it is. And also another big one, social media. Set boundaries on social media. It can be very toxic, especially if you're going through the stage of burnout where you feel like you're losing a passion for something, and then you go on Instagram and you see somebody posting about their amazing life and their amazing job and the career and the family, and it can be really toxic. So I'd say also set limits to social media as well. And it's really important to find a support group, people who you can talk freely about these things to, what you're going through, people who aren't going to judge you, people who maybe understand what you're going through. That's definitely important, to have the right people around you, and take it one step at a time. Get back into your daily routine slowly. Another thing that my therapist recommended was for me to find something every day that brings me joy. Something small. It could have been anything I got to pick, just something to do every day so that I got out of the habit of saying it's the same stuff, just a different day. And this can be really beneficial to people who aren't even going through burnout, to just find the little stuff every day, things that you don't normally do, to just uplift you. So I would go on walks, go to a coffee shop, visit a new place, go shopping, talk to friends that I usually haven't talked to in a really long time, meet new people. All of these things just made that spark or that enthusiasm come back and really drove me out of that burnout phase. So it was really important for me to do, and I still keep that same thing in effect today, just finding something different every day to do. It's really important because in college, you kind of are doing the same thing every day. You're going to the same classes, you're around the same people, you're eating the same terrible food. So it can be just difficult to find something to do every day that's kind of different. So you really have to just force yourself to get out there and do those things. One of the last tips I have for you guys is probably one of the scariest, because it definitely can change your future and where you're going in life. But if you're going through this burnout and it's getting bad, it may be necessary for you to change. Whether it's changing a job, changing a major, changing a friend group, changing a daily habit, changing your routine, it can be necessary to actually do that. Because for me, when I got to the source of my issue and I pulled it out and I refocused on my life and what I wanted, that passion did come back. But for some people and in some situations, you might not get that passion back. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Sometimes change is necessary. Well, it's always necessary to change, but sometimes you just get too comfortable in what you're doing and you're afraid of that change. But in order to grow, you need to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. So if it's a job and you're just like, it's a 9 to 5, you have no motivation to get up, it's the same thing, this isn't really what you want to do, it's okay to change that. You want to look at the benefit of what it's going to have on you in the long run. I know if you quit the job now, you're going to be stuck in that period of trying to find a new job, trying to find a new passion. And it can be rough and it can be scary, but the end result is that you're in the career, you're at the job that you love, and you can wake up every morning loving what you're doing. So that's important. Even if it's a major and you're afraid to change the major because now you might be in college for an extra year or an extra semester. That isn't always going to be a bad thing. That push, that fear might be what you need to get out of your comfort zone. So just to wrap up everything that was discussed, burnout, although it might not be considered a mental illness, it can definitely feel like one. You can definitely be showing symptoms of depression or having an overload of anxiety. All of this is serious. And it's something that a lot of people go through without even realizing it, which is why I wanted to bring awareness to the situation, because if it wasn't for me pinpointing it and putting a name to what I was feeling, I would have never known what I was going through. And it just feels so much better to know that, like, I wasn't going through this alone and there's an actual name for what I'm going through. And to me, it just always feels better to know that what I'm going through isn't like some bizarre thing that I'm making up in my head. Like, no, it's something that people actually go through and experience at my stage in life. And as I get older, I can definitely see myself going through it again, which is why it's really important to know how you can stop the process of burnout before it gets too serious. Because if you just let the symptoms go, your burnout can turn into depression. So if you're experiencing that, it's definitely important to reach out and talk to somebody about it. Hit me up on my socials if you ever want to discuss it or my experience. And yeah, that concludes this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope that it brought some light to whatever you're going through. If you feel like you're going through these quote-unquote depressive state of mind, it might not be depression. So yeah, that concludes this week's episode. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your week. Peace out.